Mr. Yang, it is great to be with you today. I'm excited about our conversation. Guys, we're privileged today to be with Mr. Andrew Yang of the Forward Party and former Democratic presidential candidate to talk about all things blockchain, crypto, Forward Party, and how those things interact. First, I wanted to get your impression. I know you've been to Austin several times, but this is your yet another trip to the tech capital, the second Silicon Valley of the world. And how do you feel about being here, and what's your feel?
It's great. The energy is palpable, and I have to say the city changes every time I come, in good ways, in my opinion, because you have just a ton of enterprise and an influx of people, jobs, innovation. It's great.
Yeah. We want to make Texas the hub for blockchain and crypto, and the jurisdiction of choice for entrepreneurs and VCs to come here to build, because there's some regulatory uncertainty in the rest of the United States with the federal government and some of the other states as well. We saw New York banning Bitcoin mining, almost all Bitcoin mining, except for mining that was taking place on 100% renewables. So speaking about the federal government, there was a big bill that was filed this week, Senator Lummis and Senator Gillibrand, a bipartisan bill, around crypto and the regulatory environment. Your opinions, your thoughts, what did they do right? What could they improve upon?
I think it's a fantastic starting point. And first, let me say that in terms of trying to make Texas the hub, you certainly have a lot of wind at your backs. I have a lot of friends who've come your way. But I think that the Lummis-Gillibrand bill is a phenomenal jumping off point. It is bipartisan, as you said. And I think it demonstrated a real nuanced understanding of some of the different aspects of the industry, the different nature of activities. And so I hope it continues close to this form. But we should know that these are very early days, that this is going to have to make it through 4 different committees. But as a starting point, I thought it was tremendous.
And the CFTC as the primary regulator, is that aligned with what your thoughts, or do you think we need a dual regulator with the SEC?
Well, I'm generally of the mind that if you have a single regulator, then they're more likely to have a consistent approach and higher expertise. So, obviously the other thing is that if you have an agency, they generally want to have responsibility for something. So my preference would be that there is one sole agency that has responsibility, because these are very sophisticated projects that do require a degree of knowledge and domain expertise. And the last thing you'd want, and this, by the way, is the reality of what a lot of enterprises are dealing with now, is you don't want 2 different regulators coming in telling you 2 different things, which is happening. And it's, and that's not, it's in my mind, pushing some of this growth out of the U.S., honestly.
Yeah. And one of the major barriers to mass adoption, as you know, is the tax implications. The IRS treats this as property, so there's capital gains implications when you purchase things with crypto. The de minimis portion of the bill, setting $200 as the limit, is that the right threshold? Do you think that's the same as foreign exchange? The de minimis, it's sort of some precedence there. But if I were to go buy coffee with Bitcoin after Lummis-Gillibrand bill passes and the de minimis exemption is there, that creates a lot less friction. Do you think that's the right threshold? Do you think that's one of the critical components of the bill, or is that of lesser importance?
Oh, I think it's very important because you want to have an environment where people are able to follow the rules without making it unduly cumbersome, especially if you have routine day-to-day transactions. And one of the goals, obviously, of ours is that this becomes ubiquitous, and people. Last thing you want is people having to imagine that they have to file a transaction or tell their accountant about something where they're just buying a meal or something mundane. In terms of the level of the threshold, no, as you said, there is some precedent for around that level. You'd imagine it's somewhere in like the hundreds of dollars. So it seems about right.
Yeah. So in your work with the Forward Party, you've obviously, you're speaking to a lot of Americans in the sort of that centrist space, centrist conservative, centrist progressive, unaligned politically, unaffiliated. There's a big component within this decentralized crypto environment that resonates with that. How do we keep this bipartisan with the polarization that we see today? How do we keep Bitcoin and blockchain bipartisan?
Yeah, and this should be a paramount goal of ours, because 98% of things in American life get politicized. And that's bad, because then you wind up with a regulatory environment that can shift based upon which party's in power. You have treatment that's more ideological and rational.
And more binary.
Yeah, more binary. And so you want to avoid that if you can. I think the path is to try to demonstrate that these tools and technologies can benefit a very, very broad group of people beyond, frankly, what's being depicted in the press every day. And there are a lot of minority communities that are early adopters to Bitcoin and Web3. And if we can make the case that, look, this is nonpartisan, this is bipartisan or tripartisan, that's a win for everyone. It's one reason why the Forward Party exists, is because there are pitfalls to you having this two-sided bipolar system, especially in a time when literally the majority of Americans want there to be some reasonable middle ground. I'm going to suggest that a lot of folks who are in Web3 are independent, libertarian, apolitical. A lot of them tell me that they're essentially single issue voters. They say, look, like whatever is going to happen with let's say Bitcoin, that's how I'm going to vote. And so the Forward Party wants to be a natural home and ally for those voters. Some of our biggest donors are crypto donors to the Forward Party. And one of the things I joke about, but it's funny how the world works. It's like third party in Web3, like there's like this very, very natural alignment. But we want to ensure that the U.S. remains the kind of place where technologies can originate, develop, and hopefully improve millions of lives.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit more about the Forward Party, entrepreneurism in the United States. We've seen a massive amount of jobs go offshore, and over the centuries, when this happens, there are groups that think that those jobs are going away for good, but with technology, there are new jobs created. And so we need a different kind of, a more flexible labor market. And when in your book, which I would recommend to everyone, Forward by Andrew Yang, the key concept is generating and encouraging and incubating more entrepreneurs as almost like a new labor class, if you will. Or talk a little bit about how we do that. I mean, we can't just teach it in schools. We should. That's one thing. But how else can we cultivate this spirit of entrepreneurism in the United States?
One thing I say in the book is that entrepreneurship classes and coursework actually have something of a negative correlation to starting a company, which is a tough thing because a lot of people are studying entrepreneurship. But what happens in that context is you wind up with a sense of all these steps and these layers. And at an earlier point, if you were going to start something, maybe you just would have been like, I'll try and figure it out and then see what happens. You and I were discussing Mark Cuban, and Mark's a bit of an older generation at this point, but that's the way he got his start. I mean, he started running businesses when he was a young person. But it is the case that America is losing its edge in entrepreneurship, and that if we lose that edge, we lose maybe everything. So the Forward Party, entrepreneurship, Web3 are all very much aligned, and I personally am a serial entrepreneur. I know how hard it is. I also know how rewarding it is and how vital it is. I firmly believe that it's going to be entrepreneurs that set this country on a better path if that's what our future holds. And we should know this country is struggling in very fundamental ways, in part because of a dysfunctional bipolar political system that doesn't speak for the majority of Americans anymore.
Absolutely. So where can people go to learn more about you? Obviously, they need to pick up a copy of Forward. But where else? Where would you send?
Wow, my literary agent thanks you. But well, you can just go to andrewyang.com or forwardparty.com. But let's build a movement that helps make America the country that we know it can be and should be. And it needs people like us stepping up and leading the way.
Absolutely. Mr. Yang, thanks for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, tune in over the next couple of days as we interview distinguished thought leaders like Andrew across the spectrum who are here in Austin, Texas for Consensus, who are here from all over the world.
Thank you, Lee. Everything's bigger in Texas, including the Blockchain Association.
Yeah, that we say Texas is Bitcoin country. So,
well, it's getting there.
It's getting there. Thanks, guys.